Dr. Kalen Vorth stared at the holographic display floating before him in the research chamber of the Zephyrian Council ship. The blue light cast strange shadows across his elongated face as he studied the data streaming across the screen. His 6 fingers danced over the control interface while his large black eyes absorbed every detail of the planetary readings. This world was unlike anything he had ever seen in his 40 years of xenobiology research. The planet designated as Sol 3 appeared on the scanner as a swirling blue and green sphere with white cloud formations that seemed to move with violent intensity. The readings made Kalen's respiratory organs contract with fear. Surface temperatures that ranged from -40 to +50 degrees in their measurement system, atmospheric pressure that would crush most known life forms, radiation levels from the system's star that would cook living tissue in mere hours, tectonic plates that shifted and collided with devastating force, weather patterns that included electrical storms capable of generating millions of energy units in single strikes. "This is madness," whispered his assistant, Dr. Lyra Kell, as she examined the atmospheric composition readings. Her silver skin seemed to pale even further as she read the data. 21% oxygen. That concentration would cause spontaneous combustion in most organic compounds. And look at this nitrogen level. The pressure alone would be lethal. Kalen nodded slowly, but his scientific curiosity burned brighter than his fear. Exactly why this world is perfect for our experiment. No possible contamination from existing life forms. No interference from primitive civilizations. Just pure, hostile environment for us to study. The door to the research chamber hissed open, and Commander Nexus Krell entered with his characteristic military stride. His dark blue uniform bore the insignia of the Zephyrian Exploration Corps, and his 3 arms moved with practiced efficiency as he reviewed the datapad in his hands. "Dr. Vorth, the Council is requesting your final assessment. Are you certain this Deathworld is suitable for the Dimensional Gate project?" "More than suitable, Commander," Kalen replied, his voice gaining confidence. "This planet represents the ultimate testing ground. If our gate technology can function in these conditions, it can work anywhere in the galaxy. The electromagnetic interference from those massive storms will test our shielding systems. The gravitational anomalies from the large satellite will challenge our stabilization protocols. The corrosive atmosphere will prove our materials can withstand anything." Nexus studied the holographic display with the analytical mind of a career military officer. The energy readings suggest massive volcanic activity across multiple continents. Seismic instability on a scale I have never encountered. How do you propose we establish a research station on such a volatile world? Our environmental suits are designed to protect against far worse conditions, Kalen explained, manipulating the display to show cross-sections of the planet's surface. We have operated successfully on the acid rain worlds of the Kepler system. We have established bases on the frozen methane storms of Titan 7. This oxygen-nitrogen world, despite its hostility, should be manageable with proper preparation. Dr. Lyra moved closer to examine what appeared to be vast bodies of liquid covering much of the planet's surface. These water formations are enormous. The chemical analysis shows they contain dissolved minerals that would be toxic to most species we know. Salt concentrations that would dehydrate tissue instantly, and the temperature variations in these bodies range from freezing solid to steam production. Perfect isolation barriers, Kalen noted with scientific enthusiasm. Natural quarantine zones that will prevent any possible contamination of our research from outside interference. 3 sectors away from the Zephyrian research vessel, on the surface of the planet they were studying, Commander Jake Sullivan sat in the control room of the North American Aerospace Defense Command. His weathered hands moved across multiple keyboards as he monitored the morning reports from satellite networks and ground-based sensors. 23 years of military service had taught him to pay attention to anomalies, and the readings from the Pacific Monitoring Station were definitely anomalous. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, take a look at these energy signatures," Jake called across the room to his communications officer. Amy Rodriguez pushed back from her workstation and moved to stand behind Jake's chair. Her dark eyes scanned the data streaming across his multiple monitors. "That's not normal solar activity," Amy observed, her voice carrying the calm professionalism that made her one of the best communications specialists in the Defense Force. "The electromagnetic pattern is too regular, too structured. Almost like it's artificially generated." Jake leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. The coffee in his mug had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. Run a comparison analysis against all known satellite signatures. Check for any experimental projects in that grid sector, and get me a direct line to the Pacific Fleet Command. Sergeant Tyler Brooks looked up from his radar station across the room. Commander, I'm getting some weird atmospheric disturbances about 200 miles west of the California coast. Looks like some kind of electromagnetic bubble forming in the upper atmosphere. Define weird. Sergeant Jake said, his attention now fully focused on Tyler's station. Well, sir, it's like the air itself is bending. Radar waves are bouncing off something that shouldn't be there. Temperature readings are all over the place, and the electromagnetic spectrum is showing patterns I've never seen before. Amy finished her analysis and turned to face Jake with a puzzled expression. No match in any of our databases, Commander. Whatever is generating this energy signature, it's not from any Earth-based technology I know about. Jake stood up and walked to the large display screen that dominated the front wall of the control room. The image showed a real-time satellite view of the Pacific Ocean with various data overlays, indicating weather patterns, shipping traffic, and military positions. In the sector that Tyler had identified, a strange distortion was becoming visible even in the optical spectrum. Get me General Morrison on secure line, Jake ordered, and I want every available sensor in the Pacific Theater focused on that anomaly. If someone is testing new technology in our airspace without authorization, I want to know about it. Meanwhile, far above Earth's atmosphere, the Zephyrian Council vessel completed its final scans of the hostile world below. In the main assembly chamber, representatives from 12 different species gathered around a circular conference table that projected a three-dimensional image of the planet. The preliminary assessment is complete, announced Counselor Vera Zan, her reptilian features reflecting the blue light from the planet's image. Dr. Vorth confirms that this world meets all criteria for the dimensional gate experiment. Hostile environment, no intelligent life, stable orbital mechanics. The representative from the Crystalline Consortium, a being of pure silicon and light, pulsed with agreement. The risk factors are acceptable. Energy output requirements are within normal parameters. Authorization to proceed with gate construction. Dr. Kalin watched from the observation deck as the massive gate construction ship moved into position above the blue and white planet. Soon they would have their first permanent research station on a true Deathworld. He had no way of knowing that far below, human radar operators were tracking every movement of his ship, or that the residents of this so-called Deathworld were already preparing to investigate the strange visitors who had arrived in their solar system. The Dimensional Gate project was about to begin, and neither species had any idea how dramatically this first contact would change both of their civilizations. The Dimensional Gate opened with a sound like thunder rolling across the heavens. High above the Pacific Ocean, space itself seemed to tear apart as the Zephyrian portal stabilized into a shimmering circle of energy, 2 kilometers wide. The massive structure pulsed with alien technology that bent light and warped the very fabric of reality around its edges. Commander Nexus. Krell stood in the bridge of the scout vessel as it prepared to descend through the gate. His 3 arms worked efficiently at the control panels while his team of 12 specialists ran final checks on their environmental suits. Each suit was a masterpiece of engineering, designed to protect against the most extreme conditions the galaxy could offer. Radiation shielding that could withstand stellar flares, temperature regulation systems capable of functioning in absolute zero or molten metal environments, atmospheric processors that could extract breathable gas from almost any chemical mixture. All systems show green for Deathworld deployment, reported his second-in-command, Lieutenant Zara Ken. Her voice came through the communication system with the slight distortion that indicated she was already sealed inside her environmental suit. Atmospheric composition readings confirm the hostile environment. 21% oxygen will require constant monitoring to prevent combustion risks. Nexus checked his own suit readings one final time. The heads-up display showed all protective systems functioning perfectly. Remember, this is a reconnaissance mission only. We establish a landing zone, set up the beacon for the research station, and return to the gate within 6 hours. The radiation exposure limits for this Deathworld are absolute. The scout ship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star. The heat shields glowed white-hot as they encountered the thick, corrosive atmosphere that the aliens knew would destroy most known materials within minutes. Inside the ship, the crew monitored their life support systems with nervous attention. Every breath of the ship's filtered air could be their last if the Environmental SEALs failed, Captain. Alex Carter was leading a routine training exercise with his Marine squad in the forests of Oregon when the alien ship screamed overhead. The sonic boom shattered windows in nearby towns and sent wildlife fleeing in all directions. Alex dropped to one knee and raised his binoculars to track the falling object as it crashed into the forest about 3 miles from their position. Johnson, get on the radio to base command. Alex ordered his communications specialist. Tell them we have an unidentified aircraft down in Sector 7. Rodriguez, Martinez, you're with me. We're going to investigate. Corporal Ben Johnson worked his radio with practiced efficiency. Base, this is Alpha Squad. We have eyes on what appears to be an aircraft crash in the National Forest. No visible fire or smoke, but the impact was significant. Requesting permission to investigate and provide assistance. The reply came back immediately. Alpha Squad, you are authorized to investigate. Emergency services are being dispatched to your location. Exercise caution and report any hazardous materials. Alex led his 3 Marines through the dense forest toward the crash site. The Oregon woods were thick with Douglas fir and cedar trees, their branches creating a canopy that filtered the sunlight into dancing patterns on the forest floor. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the scent of pine needles and the sound of birds that had returned after the shock of the sonic boom. What they found when they reached the crash site was beyond anything in their training manuals. The ship was roughly cylindrical, about 40 meters long, and made of a metal that seemed to shift color in the changing light. Strange symbols covered its hull, and energy patterns danced across its surface like captured lightning. Most shocking of all, figures in bulky environmental suits were climbing out of what appeared to be an emergency hatch. Holy hell, whispered Private Eddie Martinez. Are those spacesuits? Stay calm and keep your weapons lowered, Alex commanded. If these are people, they might be injured and need help. Nexus struggled to maintain his footing as he emerged from the damaged scout ship. The gravity on this Deathworld was significantly higher than normal, making every movement feel like he was carrying twice his normal weight. His environmental suit readings showed external temperature fluctuations that would kill him in seconds without protection. The atmospheric pressure was crushing, and the radiation from the local star was already pushing his shielding systems to their limits. Status. Report, he called to his team through the communication system. Hull breach in Section 3, reported Engineer Cale Voss. Atmospheric seals are holding, but we're losing power to the primary life support grid. We need to establish emergency shelter within 2 hours or risk complete system failure. The local gravity is making movement. Difficult, added Medical Officer Dirapan. The electromagnetic interference is disrupting our communication with the gate. We may be stranded until the research vessel can lock onto our position. It was then that Nexus noticed the approaching figures. 4 beings in primitive clothing were walking directly toward them across the deadly surface of the Deathworld, with no protective equipment whatsoever. They moved easily despite the crushing gravity, and showed no signs of distress from the toxic atmosphere. One of them appeared to be carrying some kind of primitive communication device. Impossible, Nexus breathed. No life form can survive in these conditions without protection. Alex approached the crashed ship with his hands visible and his rifle slung across his back. The figures in the environmental suits appeared to be struggling with something as basic as walking. One of them had fallen and was being helped up by 2 others. Their suits looked incredibly advanced, but they seemed to be having serious difficulty with the simple act of moving around. Hello? Alex called out, his voice carrying clearly through the forest air. We're with the United States Marine Corps. Are any of you injured? Do you need medical assistance? The translator built into Nexus's suit immediately began processing the sounds, but the results made no sense. The beings were communicating through atmospheric vibrations without any protective apparatus. They were breathing the corrosive atmosphere directly into their biological systems. They were standing unprotected under radiation that should have killed them instantly. Lisa Monroe arrived at the crash site 20 minutes later in her park ranger vehicle. As the senior Forest Service representative in the area, she had been dispatched to assess any environmental damage from the crash. What she found was 4 Marines standing around talking to what appeared to be astronauts in the most advanced spacesuits she had ever seen. Anyone need medical attention? She asked as she approached the group. I've got basic first aid supplies and an emergency radio to call for helicopter. Evacuation if needed. Dr. Dirapan watched through her suit's visual sensors as another unprotected being approached across the lethal surface. This one appeared to be female of the species and showed the same impossible resistance to the Deathworld conditions. She moved with confidence through an environment that should have killed her before she took her first step. "Commander," Dira reported through the communication system, "I'm reading life signs from these beings that suggest they're not only surviving in this environment, but they're completely adapted to it. Their biological systems are actually thriving in conditions that would eliminate most known life forms." The first contact between humanity and galactic civilization had begun, and neither species yet understood just how fundamentally this meeting would change their understanding of what it meant to survive in the universe. Dr. Rebecca Torres arrived at the crash site 3 hours after the initial contact with a convoy of military vehicles and scientific equipment. As the leading xenobiologist at the Pacific Research Institute, she had been pulled from her morning lecture and rushed to Oregon with a team of linguists, physicists, and communication specialists. The drive through the forest had been surreal, knowing that humanity was about to have its first conversation with visitors from another world. The alien ship sat in a clearing that had been hastily secured by military personnel. The crashed vessel looked even more impressive in person than it had in the satellite photographs. Strange symbols covered its hull, and energy patterns continued to dance across its surface like living electricity. Most remarkable of all were the 6 figures in environmental suits who sat in what appeared to be a circle, apparently having some kind of conference with Marine Captain Alex Carter and Park Ranger Lisa Monroe. "Status report." "Captain," Rebecca said as she approached the group. Her team of specialists spread out behind her, setting up communication equipment and scanning devices with practiced efficiency. "Ma'am, we've got 6 individuals in advanced environmental suits," Alex replied. "They seem to be having some kind of technical difficulties with their equipment. Their suits appear to be malfunctioning in ways that are making basic movement difficult for them." Dr. Kevin Price, the lead linguist on Rebecca's team, was already setting up his translation computers and audio analysis equipment. He had spent 20 years studying communication patterns and language structures, but nothing had prepared him for the challenge of decoding an entirely alien language system. "Have they attempted any form of communication?" Kevin asked while adjusting his sensitive recording devices. "They've been making sounds through some kind of speaker system in their suits," Lisa Monroe explained, "but it doesn't sound like any language I've ever heard. It's more like musical tones with electronic distortion." Inside his environmental suit, Commander Nexus Krell was struggling with problems he had never imagined possible. The atmospheric pressure readings were causing his suit's automatic systems to constantly recalibrate, making basic functions unreliable. The electromagnetic interference from what his sensors insisted was a routine weather pattern was disrupting his communication arrays. Most disturbing of all, his radiation sensors kept insisting that he was standing directly under a star that should have killed him hours ago. "Medical Officer Pan, what is your assessment of these beings?" Nexus asked through the suit communication system. "Commander, their biological readings are impossible, according to everything we know about life in the galaxy," Dira replied. "They're breathing an atmosphere that should cause immediate toxic shock. They're operating under gravitational stress that should crush their skeletal systems. They're exposed to radiation levels that should cause cellular breakdown within minutes." Engineer Cale Voss was monitoring the environmental data from his position near the damaged ship. "Sir, I think our sensors might be malfunctioning. The readings suggest these beings are not only surviving in these conditions, but their biological systems are actually optimized for this environment." Dr. Kevin Price made the first breakthrough in communication when he realized that the alien sounds contained mathematical patterns. Using his computer analysis systems, he identified recurring sequences that appeared to represent numerical concepts. Within 2 hours, he had established a basic counting system that both species could understand. The real breakthrough came when Dr. Rebecca Torres used simple gestures to indicate the concept of pointing. She pointed to herself and said "human" slowly and clearly. Then she pointed to the sky and made a questioning gesture toward the aliens. Commander Nexus understood the basic concept immediately. Through his suit's speaker system, he attempted to reproduce the sound patterns he had been recording. "Zephyrian," he said, the word coming out distorted by his translation system but clearly recognizable as an attempt at communication. "Progress," Rebecca announced to her team. "We've established species identification. Now let's try basic environmental concepts. Dr. Torres picked up a handful of dirt from the forest floor and held it up for the aliens to see. Then she breathed deeply and visibly, making exaggerated motions to show that she was drawing the local atmosphere directly into her lungs. The reaction from the aliens was immediate and dramatic. Even through their bulky environmental suits, their body language conveyed shock and disbelief. "They think our atmosphere is dangerous," Kevin observed. "Look at how they're reacting to the demonstration of normal breathing." Colonel Ryan Hayes arrived with additional military support just as the communication breakthrough was happening. As the regional commander for extraterrestrial contact protocols, he had trained for this scenario for 15 years, but the reality was far different from any of the simulations. "Dr. Torres, what's our situation?" Ryan asked as he surveyed the scene. "We've got visitors who seem to think our planet is incredibly dangerous," Rebecca replied. "They're wearing environmental suits that look like they're designed for the most extreme conditions imaginable. But they appear to be having equipment malfunctions that are making basic tasks difficult. Or," Kevin added thoughtfully, "their suits aren't malfunctioning at all. They might be working exactly as designed for conditions that are far more extreme than what we consider normal." The implications of Kevin's observation hit everyone at the same time. These aliens hadn't crashed because of mechanical failure. They had crashed because their technology was designed for environments so hostile that Earth's relatively mild conditions were causing their systems to work incorrectly. Dr. Dira Pan was reaching the same conclusion from inside her environmental suit. "Commander, I don't think our equipment is malfunctioning. I think this world is far less hostile than our initial scans indicated." "Explain," Nexus ordered. "The beings here have evolved in these conditions. What we're reading as extreme environmental hazards, they're reading as normal living conditions. Our suits are designed for Deathworlds where the temperature variations are measured in hundreds of degrees, where the atmospheric pressure can crush starship hulls, where radiation levels can sterilize entire continents." Engineer Keel made the connection that changed everything. "Sir, what if this isn't a Deathworld at all? What if our definition of hostile environment is completely different from theirs?" The revelation hit both species simultaneously. The humans began to understand that they lived on a world that other intelligent species considered impossibly dangerous. The aliens began to realize that they had completely misunderstood the nature of the planet they had chosen for their research station. Dr. Rebecca Torres looked up at the sky where the alien portal still hung like a shimmering ring of energy. "If they consider our world this dangerous, what kind of environments do they come from? What does that make us in their eyes?" The answer to that question would reshape humanity's understanding of their place in the galaxy, and it would change how every other civilization viewed the species that had evolved on the Deathworld called Earth. The emergency session of the Zephyrian Council convened 12 hours after Commander Nexus sent his shocking report through the dimensional gate. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Assembly Chamber aboard the flagship vessel, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, electronic pulses, and harmonic vibrations that the universal translators worked frantically to process. Counselor Vera Zan stood at the center of the circular chamber, her reptilian features grave as she addressed the assembly. "The report from our advanced team changes everything we thought we knew about this system. The planet we designated as an uninhabitable Deathworld is not only inhabited, but populated by a species that has evolved to thrive in conditions that would kill most of us within moments." The representative from the crystalline consortium pulsed with rapid light patterns that indicated extreme agitation. "The implications are staggering. A species that considers toxic atmospheric conditions normal, beings that operate under gravitational forces that would crush our finest starships, life forms that absorb radiation levels that we use to sterilize medical equipment." Dr. Thane Quell, the Council's chief xenobiologist, projected holographic images of the human specimens that Nexus had recorded. Analysis of their biological structures suggests evolutionary adaptations to an environment more hostile than anything in our databases. Their skeletal systems are designed to operate under crushing gravitational stress. Their respiratory systems process atmospheric mixtures that would be lethal to every known species. Their cellular structure appears to be naturally resistant to radiation exposure that would cause genetic breakdown in normal life forms. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Marcus Bell stood in the Pentagon Situation Room surrounded by displays showing satellite imagery of the alien portal hanging over the Pacific Ocean. The massive ring of energy had remained stable for over 18 hours, and every attempt to scan it with conventional technology had failed to penetrate whatever exotic physics kept it operational. "What's our assessment of their capabilities?" Marcus asked the assembled Joint Chiefs and scientific advisors. Dr. Gary Phillips from the National Science Foundation consulted his tablet before responding. "Based on the crashed vessel we've been examining, their technology is centuries ahead of ours in materials science and energy manipulation. However, their environmental systems appear to be massively over-engineered for Earth." "Conditions explain that," requested General Angela Foster from her position at the strategy table. "Their environmental suits are designed to protect against conditions far more extreme than anything on Earth," Gary continued. "It's like they expected to land on the surface of Venus or in the middle of a nuclear reactor. Their systems are so robust that our normal environment is actually causing them operational difficulties." Helen Curtis, the State Department's chief diplomatic liaison, had been coordinating with international partners since the first contact. "We've got confirmation from our allies that this is a global phenomenon. The energy readings from that portal are being detected by every nation, with space monitoring capabilities. The question is whether this represents a threat or an opportunity." In the field laboratory that had been hastily established near the crash site, Dr. Rebecca Torres was making discoveries that challenged every assumption about human biology. Working with the alien medical officer Dr. Dira Pan, she had begun comparing human and Zephyrian physiological data through a combination of universal mathematical concepts and basic medical imaging. "This is remarkable," Rebecca said as she studied the comparative scans on her laptop computer. "Their bone density is about 30% of ours. Their muscle mass is significantly lower. Their cardiovascular systems are designed for much lower atmospheric pressure." Dr. Dira Pan was equally amazed by the human readings displayed on her environmental suit's internal screens. "Your species shows adaptations I have never seen in any life form. Your bone structure is designed to resist forces that would shatter our skeletal systems. Your muscular development suggests evolution. Under constant high-stress conditions, the breakthrough in understanding came when Kevin Price successfully established a basic translation protocol using mathematical concepts and simple physics demonstrations. The conversation that followed changed both species' understanding of their place in the universe. Your world," Nexus explained through the translation system, "registers on our sensors as Class 12 Deathworld, most extreme category in our classification system." "What makes it so dangerous from your perspective?" Rebecca asked. "Gravity 3 times normal safe levels, atmospheric composition that causes combustion reactions, electromagnetic radiation from local star exceeds safety limits by factor of 20. Tectonic instability suggests frequent catastrophic events. Weather patterns include electrical storms with energy output comparable to weapon systems." Dr. Rebecca Torres exchanged glances with Colonel Ryan Hayes before responding. "Those are normal conditions for us. We evolved here. This is what we consider a comfortable environment." The implications sank in slowly for both species. From the Zephyrian perspective, they had encountered a race of beings who lived casually in conditions that represented the absolute limit of survivable environments. From the human perspective, they were learning that their world was considered impossibly hostile by galactic standards. "If Earth is that dangerous compared to other worlds," Ryan said thoughtfully, "what does that say about human capabilities in less hostile environments?" Engineer Quall provided the answer that would reshape galactic politics. "In our experience, species that evolve on extreme worlds become capable of surviving anywhere. You would be able to operate in environments that no other known species could tolerate." Back aboard the Zephyrian Council ship, the debate over how to respond to the discovery of humanity had become intense. Some representatives argued for immediate withdrawal and quarantine protocols. Others saw potential for unprecedented cooperation with a species uniquely adapted for exploration of hostile environments. "Consider the implications," argued Dr. Kalin Orth. "We have discovered a species that could explore and colonize worlds that have been beyond our reach for millennia. Gas giants with crushing atmospheric pressure, radiation-soaked worlds near pulsars, planets with gravitational fields that destroy conventional equipment." Or, countered the military representative from the Hegemony Coalition, "we have discovered a species so adapted to hostile conditions that they represent a potential threat to every civilized world in the galaxy. The vote that followed would determine whether humanity's first contact with galactic civilization would result in friendship or fear. The tally was close, but the scientific curiosity faction won by a narrow margin. The Council voted to establish formal diplomatic contact with the species from the Deathworld. On Earth, similar debates were taking place in government buildings around the world. The revelation that humans were uniquely adapted for extreme environments opened possibilities that no one had considered before. If other worlds were less hostile than Earth, humans might be capable of thriving anywhere in the galaxy. The stage was set for negotiations that would determine humanity's role in a galactic community they never knew existed. 6 months after first contact, Captain Nathan Brooks stood at the threshold of the dimensional gate wearing nothing more than a standard Earth atmospheric suit and basic radiation shielding. Behind him, a team of 12 humans prepared for humanity's first official expedition into galactic space. The contrast between their lightweight equipment and the massive environmental protection systems used by other species had become a symbol of humanity's unique place in the galaxy. Dr. Melissa Turner checked her geological survey equipment one final time before joining the expedition team. As Earth's leading expert on extreme environment geology, she had been selected to assess the mining and colonization potential of worlds that other species considered too dangerous to approach. Her equipment was surprisingly simple compared to the advanced protection systems that alien species required for the same work. "All systems green for departure," announced Rick Martinez, the expedition's survival specialist. His background included mountain rescue operations, deep-sea exploration, and Arctic survival training. What made him truly valuable to the galactic community was that his Earth-based extreme environment experience translated directly to planetary exploration that other species could not attempt. The dimensional gate hummed with energy as the human expedition stepped through into a realm of space that no Earthborn species had ever seen. The transition felt like walking through a wall of warm water, and then they emerged into a vast space station that served as the diplomatic hub for the Zephyrian Council. The architecture was breathtaking in its alien beauty. Crystalline structures that seemed to grow like living organisms extended in all directions. Energy patterns flowed through transparent tubes that connected different sections of the station. Most remarkable of all were the various alien species moving through the corridors in their environmental suits, each one designed for radically different atmospheric and gravitational requirements. Counselor Vera Zan greeted the human delegation in the main diplomatic chamber. Her reptilian features showed what humans had learned to recognize as expressions of curiosity and cautious optimism. "Welcome to Nexus Station, representatives of Earth. Your arrival marks a historic moment for galactic civilization. Thank you for the invitation," Nathan replied through the translation system that had been refined over months of communication between the species. "We're honored to represent humanity in these discussions." The tour of Nexus Station revealed the scope of galactic civilization that humans had never imagined. Representatives from dozens of species conducted business and research in carefully controlled environmental zones. Each species required specific atmospheric conditions, gravitational settings, and radiation shielding that made interaction between different civilizations a complex engineering challenge. Dr. Christine Lewis, the expedition's technology specialist, was amazed by the sophisticated environmental control systems required to make the station functional. "Every corridor has multiple atmospheric zones," she observed. "The engineering required to maintain life support for this many different species simultaneously is incredible. It is necessary," explained Dr. Thane Quell as he guided the humans through the research sections. "Most species can only survive in very specific environmental conditions. Even minor variations in temperature, pressure, or atmospheric composition can be fatal." The revelation of humanity's unique adaptability became clear during the first joint research session. The humans were invited to observe an experiment that required work in what other species considered extreme conditions. The test chamber simulated the atmosphere of a planet with high radiation, elevated temperature, and atmospheric pressure that was considered moderately hostile by galactic standards. The alien researchers worked through remote manipulation systems, controlling robotic equipment from shielded observation chambers. The environmental hazards were considered too dangerous for direct exposure, even with the most advanced protective equipment available to galactic civilization. Would it be possible for us to work directly in the test chamber? Nathan asked the research coordinator. The question caused visible shock among the alien scientists. Direct exposure to the experimental conditions was considered impossible for biological life forms. When the humans demonstrated that they could work comfortably in the chamber with minimal protection, the implications became clear to everyone present. Engineer Bob Patterson joined the research team and quickly became invaluable for his ability to perform direct maintenance and calibration work in environments that required expensive robotic systems for other species. His background in offshore oil platform maintenance had prepared him for working in hostile conditions that translated perfectly to alien industrial applications. The formal negotiations began in earnest. When both sides realized the potential for mutual benefit, the Zephyrian Council offered humanity access to galactic technology, trade networks, and colonization opportunities. In exchange, humans could provide exploration and industrial services in environments that other species could not safely access. There are entire star systems that have been beyond our reach for millennia, explained Counselor Vera during the diplomatic sessions. Worlds with valuable resources that exist in radiation fields or gravitational anomalies that make conventional exploration impossible. Helen Curtis, leading the diplomatic team, understood the implications immediately. You're offering humanity a role as the galaxy's extreme environment specialist. More than that, replied Dr. Kalen Vorth. You would become the pioneers who open new frontiers that benefit all galactic civilization. The first joint mission launched 3 weeks later. A human exploration team led by Captain Nicole Green traveled to a world that orbited close to a binary star system. The radiation levels and gravitational stress had made the planet impossible to study despite valuable mineral deposits that could benefit multiple species. Dr. Kevin Phillips and Dr. Janet Cooper worked alongside Zephyrian scientists to establish the first joint research station on a world that other species could only observe through remote sensors. The humans lived and worked in conditions that required the aliens to remain in heavily shielded orbital platforms. The success of the first joint mission led to an avalanche of cooperation requests. Species throughout the galaxy began proposing exploration and research projects that required human involvement. Worlds that had been written off as too dangerous became accessible with human teams leading the exploration efforts. The transformation was remarkable for both sides. Humans gained access to technology and knowledge that advanced Earth civilization by centuries. Alien species gained access to resources and scientific opportunities that had been impossible before humanity joined the galactic community. The joint research facility that was eventually established on Earth became a symbol of the new relationship. Human and alien scientists worked together in laboratories where humans could operate in normal Earth atmosphere while their alien colleagues participated through advanced environmental systems that protected them from what they still considered the extreme conditions of the Deathworld. Captain Alex Carter, who had been present at first contact, was promoted to head the new Earth Defense Force Space Division. His role was to coordinate human participation in galactic exploration missions and to ensure that humanity's unique capabilities were used responsibly in the broader galactic community. The story that had begun with aliens opening a gate to what they thought was an uninhabited death world had evolved into a partnership that changed both human and galactic civilization. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not as conquerors or subjects, but as the specialists who could go where no other species dared to, venture and return, with knowledge and resources that benefited everyone. The death world called Earth had produced the galaxy's ultimate survivors, and the universe would never be the same.